It's a hello and a welcome to you for the politics wrap of the week. My name is Arabile Gumede, and we're going to try and unpack for you exactly what has happened this week, because man, what a week it certainly has been. Now, the DA's top job is now up for grabs. That's after party leader John Steenhuisen's exit from the leadership race. The Democratic Alliance is heading to a federal elective Congress. That's set to happen in April. And Steenhuisen's exit has now prompted the question, who's next? Political analysts Asanda Nwasheng as well as Daniel Silk are standing by for that conversation. So we'll get into it in just a bit.
I might be here in Durban, I might be in Johannesburg, I might be in Cape Town, I might be everywhere. So it is important that I have a team that can be on the job all the time.
Umkhonto weSizwe party, the MKP, establishes a presidential task team as the party cements its place in the political landscape.
We need mass registration of young people all over South Africa, led by the Youth Command. The Youth Command must be at the forefront to mobilize the youth of South Africa to participate in the local government elections. We are nothing without the youth of South Africa.
And the EFF has slammed the decision by the Speaker of Parliament, Thoko Didiza, not to summon controversial businessman Brown Mogotsi and private investigator Paul O Sullivan to appear before the ad hoc committee probing allegations of corruption in the South African Police Service.
There were 5 names from the Madlanga Commission that were referred to us, and one is already suspended, and the others, the investigation is on, but their notice of suspension are under consideration at this stage.
Also this week, as the work of the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry continues to unravel the intricate web of corruption and maladministration in the SAPS, forces moving swiftly to deal with alleged perpetrators. The National Prosecuting Authority has established a task force that includes members of the Asset Forfeiture Unit. As investigations continue to unfold. To this now, National Assembly Speaker Thoko Didiza has blocked a parliamentary committee's attempt to subpoena alleged political fixer Brown Mogotsi. She says the body, which is looking into allegations of infiltration in the criminal justice system, has ignored its repeated requests for security. He is accused of having corrupt relations with Police Minister on special leave, that's Umkhonto, and controversial businessman Vusimuzi Kat Matlala. Mogotsi, who's testified before the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, informed the committee about the murder of informants and ongoing threats to his safety. Didiza says under the Powers, Privileges and Immunities of Parliament Act, a subpoena can only be issued when a witness refuses to appear without sufficient cause. She adds that Mogotsi has been cooperating through virtual consultations and has given his statement to evidence leaders. At the same time, Didiza has also refused to compel forensic investigator Paul O Sullivan to return from overseas to testify in person. He requested to testify virtually following death threats. Didiza says the body failed to engage with O Sullivan's reasons for making such an request. In a letter to the committee chairperson, Didiza declined to authorize the summons, citing the committee's failure to engage with O Sullivan's reasons for requesting virtual testimony. O Sullivan emerged as a person of interest during the committee's investigation into allegations that were made by Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. When invited to appear in November last year, he responded saying he was overseas until late February and requested to testify virtually. The committee directed him to formally apply for virtual testimony. In his application, Paul O Sullivan revealed he was forced to move abroad with his family following death threats. Last month, the committee declined his application and voted to issue a subpoena. Right, now for more on this, I'm joined by Parliamentary spokesperson Moloto Mothapo, who speaks to us now. Moloto, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it. I mean, one thing is for sure, the EFF says it is trying to shield Brown Mogotsi, or Parliament is trying to shield Brown Mogotsi and Paul O Sullivan from accountability. Perhaps we could just get your response.
Yeah, no. I think that is a very unfortunate assertion, because the Speaker has got no reason whatsoever to shield anyone. She has formed this committee. She has spearheaded the formation of the committee to ensure that it is able to do its job, and she has supported it since day one and up to now. So the decision in relation to both Mr. O Sullivan and Mr. Mogotsi were taken by the Speaker after careful consideration of the request of the committee. So these are not decisions, Arabile, that can be made arbitrarily, but must be grounded in the requirements regulating the issuing of summons in terms of the Powers and Privilege Act, the rules of Parliament, and the need to protect both Parliament and the committee from court review that is avoidable. So in respect of Mr. O Sullivan, the records available, that is the information that the Speaker is basing her decision on, that is submitted by the committee. It does not say that Mr. O Sullivan has refused to appear before the committee. Instead, he has formally applied to attend the meeting virtually as permitted by the committee's own terms of reference, which provides that when a witness has compelling grounds not to appear physically before the committee, she or may apply to the committee for appearance and to testify through virtual platform. And he has done this based on the reasons that he is currently outside of the country and has raised concerns relating to his personal safety. He further offered to testify from any South African embassy abroad, of course, subject to certain conditions that the location of that embassy should not be revealed for security reasons. So the difficulty that the Speaker has with the committee's request is that the correspondent does not demonstrate that the committee has substantively considered or engaged with the reasons Mr. O Sullivan has advanced when declining his request for virtual appearance. So as someone's, and it must be emphasized, can only be lawfully issued where a witness has failed or refused to appear without sufficient cause. And in this instance, that threshold has not been demonstrated by the committee. So, Mogotsi, this may weaken Parliament's case should it proceed to the court. It is also important to know that Mr. O Sullivan, as you have said, has been engaging with the committee through virtual platform, through the evidence leaders. So the same is with regard to Mr. Mogotsi.
Sure.
The records that the information that has been submitted by the committee.
All right, Democratic Alliance leader John Steenhuisen has confirmed that he will not be running for a third term. Steenhuisen announced that he will not be seeking re-election as the federal leader, saying he had accomplished his Democratic Alliance moonshot mission and will now be focusing on his work in government. Steenhuisen made headlines recently after allegations emerged that he'd abused the party's credit card for personal use. However, he was cleared following an internal investigation. During a media briefing, he said he will hand over the reins in April.
I will not seek re-election for a third term as the DA federal leader at the party's upcoming federal Congress. And I do so with a full heart, knowing that I've accomplished my DA moonshot mission and that my work in government now requires me to similarly pour my heart and soul and all of my energies into defeating foot-and-mouth disease.
Now, Steenhuisen says the scale of the challenges facing the country's farmers demands undivided leadership and said the Democratic Alliance is now stable and strong enough to enter its next phase under new leadership.
For the rest of this term of office, I will focus all of my time and energy as Minister of Agriculture on defeating the most devastating foot-and-mouth disease outbreak our country has ever seen, and to pursue the mass vaccination to ensure that this is the last mass outbreak of FMD that our country ever sees. After leading the DA into the GNU, my next chapter must be to eradicate this devastating disease from our shores once and for all. And that, I'm afraid to say, is not a part-time job.
Now, at the same time, Steenhuisen cautioned political parties in the government of national unity, urging restraint as local government elections loom.
As the DA, but also other GNU partners, hold internal elections over the coming months, it's paramount that we all continue to put South Africa ahead of factional and personal agendas. It would be a tragedy too great to contemplate for internal party maneuvering to plunge the GNU and our country into chaos.
All right, here's some analysis for you when it comes to this, just a little bit more as well. Daniel Silk, political analyst, joining us now as we get into this conversation a little bit more. Daniel, appreciate the time. Thank you so much for joining us. Is it really mission accomplished here? Did he achieve everything he really set out to, do you think? Yes, getting into the GNU is a big deal, but some might say, well, it's actually because of the failure of the ANC as opposed to the DA making strides.
Yeah, look, I think, no leader absolutely accomplishes everything. This is a wish list for any leader to do anything in any job. You get done what you can do, and at some point, I suppose you feel as though you can only do so much and no more. And I think the structure of the GNU ultimately was difficult for the DA. It was always going to be difficult for a party in opposition to now co-govern, but co-govern in a junior capacity. And I certainly would argue that the DA didn't really strike a fantastic deal in terms of positions within the GNU originally. It was left with relatively few ministries and quite difficult really to accomplish major turnarounds. And I think they have done some work in that sense. So, in general, I would argue that Steenhuisen, I think, is right in saying that what he did accomplish was steering the party into the GNU. But I think what he hasn't accomplished is really creating that clear blue water, so to speak, between the DA and the ANC and managing the GNU at the same time. It was always going to be a tough task for any leader.
So, I mean, that makes it even harder for the next leader, one would think, as well then. Overall, has his leadership changed what the Democratic Alliance looks like? I mean, one considers what the party ultimately stands for. It's very middle class in its ways as well. It's tried to be as diverse as possible. Has he still stood for all of those things, do you think, if we talk about the legacy of John Steenhuisen as the leader of the party?
Well, I don't think there's an issue about the ideology or the sort of liberal values of the Democratic Alliance. I think that has stood strong, and that's ultimately what binds the party together. I think what's really been tough is just how strident you can be in critiquing the ANC when you ultimately are sitting next to the ANC and, for that matter, the president within cabinet. And I think that's where the problem is, and that's going to be the ongoing problem for the DA here. If it does elect, and it will elect a new leader, the party may well, especially in the run-up to local government elections, want to be seen as differentiating itself even further from the ANC, raising the rhetoric, so to speak, as all parties do during an election campaign. And I think if the DA does go that route of trying to be the real opposition, not the lapdog of the ANC, as Dion George, in fact, accused Steenhuisen of being and taking the DA into becoming that kind of beast, then I think we're looking at increased tension within the GNU as it manages a rather tough pre-local election environment where both the ANC and the DA and all the other parties are really going to be vying to stand out from an increasing crowd of smaller parties.
Yeah, and that becomes a very important proponent at some later stage, just the collaboration and communication that then insists and consists of, or rather exists, should I say, for the Democratic Alliance here in terms of its future outlook. How does it actually begin to differentiate itself? You made that very key and poignant point there about it wanting to be the party that still is different to the ANC. How does it now do that, as you said, because they are part of the GNU and possibly will be, at least for this administration?
Look, I think there are going to be many options and many opportunities. The ANC will come with ideology, with rhetoric in this election campaign. The DA have to take them to task. We've seen that already from the ANC, who've spoken now just in the last few weeks on the issue of nationalisation, on the issue of the NHI. Those issues are highly controversial in South Africa. From a policy and governance point of view, should nationalisation, broadly speaking, become policy, that will be an impediment to investor confidence. The DA can take the ANC to task on that issue and should be very loud and vocal about that. On NHI spending as well, although it's an issue within cabinet for discussion, this is really an issue that can show up the inability of the state to really manage critical parts of service delivery. There's no shortage of opportunities for the DA really to be much more vocal than it has been.
Yeah, very interesting. Asanda Ngwasheng, political analyst, also joining us on the show this evening and joining us for this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, Asanda. Just overall, I asked Daniel to start off this conversation to say, is it really a mission accomplished? That's one. But also then, if it is the case, does the next leader have the task then of the only way success looks like is if they actually stand in, shall we say, more meaningful positions within the GNU? Maybe even deputy president, possibly president. Is that the only way now the DA can basically look at success?
Well, I think that, when it comes to the DA, we often make the mistake of not starting at the base level, which is that the DA is a political party, and the role of political parties is to compete for the electorate in order to win the elections. And so first prize for them should be to provide South Africa with a compelling enough case to make them the governing party of South Africa. That would be what ultimate success, or should be what ultimate success looks like for any political party. If they fail in doing that, the second would then be to become part of whatever national government or government of national unity is going to come together. If we presume that the ANC vote is going to reduce, the DA vote is not guaranteed to increase either. It may decrease and it may increase, which will then determine the ways in which the DA will be able to act. And I think there's also the possibility, which we don't think about, which is that the DA may be forced. If their numbers decrease, they may well stop being useful to the ANC and actually be forced into the opposition politics arena rather than being able to choose it. But even if they decide they will not be part of the GNU as they were, they will also be coming off on the back foot, because many staunch DA voters are upset that the ANC co-opted itself with the ANC under the GNU in the way that we have seen. And they believe that the GNU has actually compromised the DA and made it lose the little power that it did have, given the low percentage compared to the ANC and even compared to the increase in political parties like the MKP.
Yeah, I mean, then that begs the question of how significant and important the next leader of the Democratic Alliance will actually be. And that is to bear the torch for that future resonance of where the DA will stand. That means they have I mean, what do you think would be the criteria here, Asanda, for the next leader of the Democratic Alliance? What is it that you'd want them, or you think they should have, in order to lead the party to the aspects that you've made note of?
Well, the truth of the matter, the reality of the matter is that South Africa is a majority Black country. And if the DA wants to become the government of South Africa, they have a higher chance of doing that with a Black leader who has, some things in common and will bring affinity to the majority population of South Africa. But we know that the DA is not going to do that, because they tried that strategy with Mmusi Maimane. And when Mmusi Maimane didn't win the number of votes they thought that he would as a Black man, they then swiftly kicked out any and all Black people. And there are very few Black people now that are left in the DA. So what's likely to happen is that the current mayor of Cape Town is going to be the one who is going to lead, because he is the one that Helen Zille has decided will be the leader. And we've seen that in the DA, Helen Zille is the one that actually decides what's going to happen in the party. Something that is quite concerning, given that when we talk about Jacob Zuma, when we talk about Bantu Holomisa, when we talk about Julius Malema, we complain about personality-driven politics and the dangers of personality-driven politics to a democracy like South Africa. But when it comes to the DA, we pretend that there is democracy and multiplicity. But what there is personality-driven politics by Helen Zille, and that is what will lead the day, meaning the mayor of Cape Town is going to be the leader. And unfortunately, that will be to the detriment of the DA, because if Helen Zille herself wins the city of Johannesburg, and Jordan Hill is running Cape Town, it's going to be difficult to run the two metros with the top leaders while also delivering on the political party, presumably in the GNU and anywhere else that they are needed to be, given that they're going to have to be running up and rearing up for the big election of 2029.
Yeah, Daniel, very quickly, I don't have much time to spend more on the DA. I actually want to talk about the other parties too, but very quickly, you still have John Steenhuisen in the GNU post-April. Does that make sense?
Well, firstly, let me just correct the other analysts. The Congress of the DA actually chooses its leader and not a particular person, as she asserted, Helen Zille. But when it comes to John Steenhuisen, yes, I think that Mr. Steenhuisen is trying to carve out some sort of legacy for him. His entire resignation speech has been about legacy. It's a bit what he's achieved. I think there was some PR spin involved in that, and you could critique him on that. But clearly, he's trying to make sure that he has a cabinet position after the power transition that is going to occur in the DA. And I think that's perhaps what the fanfare about his resignation was from his perspective.
Yeah, Asanda, I can imagine that just in retort, that I think what you were trying to also say was, yes, Congress might be electing the leader, but the outsized influence of Helen Zille can often determine a key part of the next leader, which I think we can all sort of look at. I wanted to focus on the MK, perhaps, if we can, just before we close out the conversation to both of you. Asanda, let me start with you. The MK starting this presidential task team, does that give you a sense of the leadership of the MK is just not strong enough, especially post-Jacob Zuma?
I think that it's not surprising that they're doing this because they're trying to gear up to the local government election and, of course, the national election that's coming up in 2029. The MKP has been a political party that has, I mean, to say it has instability is actually to undermine the word instability. They have chopped and changed leaders across the nation where they govern to such a point that you don't know who is actually in leadership at this point. And if we look at this presidential committee that is put together, you'll see that one of the members is his son, and the other member is Brian Molefe. Brian Molefe is supposed to be going to court on the 19th of February and may well end up in prison and therefore unable to actually lead as he's being tasked with. Same with Siyabonga, who was also a Transnet leader, who's also in the same case as Brian Molefe. And the reason why I believe that Jacob Zuma removed his daughter, put his son, which to me, while it is legal, there is no rule against that. It is highly problematic because it creates the impression that families can lead politics in South Africa such that if you join that political party, your chances of ascending to the highest throne are actually impossible because it's like a party fiefdom. So Zuma has essentially turned the MKP or made it more clear that it's his own spaza shop and no one without the Zuma surname is really ever going to see themselves at the top. So he's making sure that should anything happen to him, he will have his son there and his son will continue his legacy as his daughter was mandated to do until she was embroiled in human trafficking allegations that we saw recently.
Yeah, Daniel, you agree with that sentiment?
Look, I just want to say that I certainly think that there are big challenges for both the ANC, the DA, and even all the other two major parties, EFF and MK. There's a fragmentation of our electorate. Now, I think our electorate are frustrated. They're frustrated with service delivery, particularly at a local government level. When you haven't got water or you've got any kind of power cuts, this is enough to make the electorate pretty unhappy, along with joblessness, which continues. The fragmentation of our politics means smaller parties are going to score. And you've seen smaller parties begin to squeeze the larger parties. ANC squeezed by MK, the DA squeezed by Freedom Front Plus and Action South Africa and Patriotic Alliance. And I think the dissatisfaction on the ground within the South African economy and concerns about leadership in MK and in the DA for some and in the ANC are going to contribute to a greater success for smaller parties. And that's the challenge for the big parties. How do you keep the smaller parties at bay, and how do you retain control and much more authoritative control over the metros to avoid this kind of chopping and changing that also undermines service delivery at a local government level?
I mean, that brings me to I think what will be the final question for this evening to both of you. But is that not actually the key issue here, that we actually have a dearth of leadership post the current leaders of a lot of political parties? Just think where you see the next leader possibly for the IFP, for the EFF, for the ANC, for the DA, for you know, as we've spoken about, the Democratic Alliance. It feels as though the succession planning of leadership in these political parties isn't necessarily there. Do we have a dearth or a weakness when it comes to the next leaders of our political parties? Asanda, let me start with you.
I think that South Africa has a culture of not building succession plans, such that even when those who are in power leave power, they ensure that they are puppeteering from the grave. That's why I mentioned the issue of Helen Zille. It's different faces like John Steenhuisen, it's going to be Jordan Hill-Lewis, and it may well be another person. But for as long as Helen Zille still retains that most powerful seat in the DA, it's going to be her word that's going to win the day. Same with Zuma, same with all of the other political parties I've mentioned before. And while on some level, it's a bad thing that we have this dearth of leadership, on another level, it's been 30 years of democracy. And so, of course, there was going to need to be a complete rethink of what we think politics should be in South Africa and who we think a leader should and will be. And so while we're going to see some hectic instability, we will eventually see a stabilization, a new leadership, and a different engagement with the politics of South Africa that in some ways isn't so much attached to the past, but also is informed by the past, which is a good thing because we need to build a new South Africa post the 30 years of democracy.
Yeah, yourself, Daniel, your thoughts on that leadership?
Yeah, look, I think political parties don't make it easy for the second rung of leaders to stand up because people are afraid to stick their neck out. And that applies not just in South Africa, but in other parts of the world as well. My concern about this, and I agree actually that there is, I think, a dissatisfaction with leadership in general, is that it's putting voters off. We're seeing a reduction in the amount of voters going to the polls, particularly in the last election, low voter turnouts, and this means that political parties are getting elected with really relatively small numbers of the vote. It's bad for our democracy, it's not inclusive enough, and young people themselves are staying away from the polls. They're just not motivated, that excited by the choice that's available. So perhaps it is time that we need a new menu of political leaders and perhaps even a new menu of political parties or greater associations or unifying factors that can bring some of these parties together that tend to be at each other's throats all the time rather than looking at the interests of the broader South Africa.
Yeah, very fascinating. Look, there's so much at play here, and of course it doesn't rest. There's still going to be so much of this conversation, and we may have it very, very soon. To both of you, Asanda Ngwasheng and Daniel Silk, thank you so much for joining us here on this Politics Wrap for the week as we just get a sense of understanding the leadership cycle as we head towards, of course, those local government elections for this year. Going to be very interesting. Speaking of the MK party, when we return, our party has established that presidential task team as it cements its place in the political landscape of the country. We're going to take a look at what exactly this means. Next. All right, welcome back. Now, Umkhonto weSizwe party has announced the formation of a presidential task team that will be working closely with its leader, President Jacob Zuma. Zuma says the team will help cover engagements that he cannot attend due to his busy schedule. He says the move to establish the task team is essential as the party continues to grow.
They are going to be playing a very important role in terms of helping and adding to what we say. As I said, for an example, I might be here in Durban, I might be in Johannesburg, I might be in Cape Town, I might be everywhere. So it is important that I have a team that can be on the job all the time, helping me so that we are not lagging behind. That's what we wanted to make known so that we shouldn't say, who are these guys, where do they come from? People who come to me in Dandla, in big numbers. They come to me to talk to me, to ask, what is this, what is that? Alone, I can't handle that. I need a committee that must be able to deal with that If there was an issue in any place, whatever, they are there. It's as simple and clear as it is. There's nothing hidden about it. I will be working with them. They will be reporting to me. I will therefore know what is happening. If I get a message that there's something at a particular place, I'm able to say, please reach there, correct this. Doing it because it is clear to me, if you see the number of people who come to Ngandla, that there are so many people, we can meet them halfway and discuss the issues, deal with the issues, be able to deal with every other thing.
All right, joining me in studio now is the MK Party's spokesperson, Ndlamulo Ndlela, who joins us to just get into this a little bit more as we talk about a new 11-person PTT, as it were. We don't want to infer anything else other than that. It is the presidential task team of the MK Party. Ndlamulo, thank you so much for the time. How does this address the leadership, let's call it instability, that perhaps may exist or some may perceive to exist within the MK Party?
I think good evening to yourself and good evening to your viewers. I think the right language you use there is perceived to be unstable, or the instability. Let me put it this way to you. Umkhonto weSizwe is a young party, that's known. You know, we are growing exponentially, and we need to put structures in place, especially in light of the local government elections, which are looming, and ensure that we have all hands on deck. Now, having a presidential task team, this is not the first time that such an initiative or such a structure was brought into the organization by the president. This time around, comparatively to what it was initially, it aims to focus, firstly, as the president, you would have heard him say now, a lot of people bring a lot of issues to him.
Yes.
Okay. And also some of those are service delivery related issues and concerns that they may have, and various other issues. But if it means that we have to have concurrent structures working in tandem, for instance, the national officials, the presidential task team, and what you're also seeing, the implementation of the provincial structures. We've just concluded, for instance, the provincial structure in Limpopo, and we are rolling out, that kind of a program with all the other provinces in strengthening the provinces. And we're having to do this and bring this capacity as quickly as possible in response to, one, the growth, two, to also ensure that, we further strengthen the party's posture. You see, the perception also that I want to clarify, because everyone keeps saying, Umkhonto weSizwe party seems unstable. What about actually Umkhonto weSizwe as a fairly new party is doing everything to strengthen itself and its posture, to ensure that it's able to respond and deliver on its mandate as per the people's needs and requests that are being brought to us on a daily basis.
Yeah. Look, I can certainly understand, and resonate perhaps with the notion of the need to change and look at things differently because it's a young party, because of its growth. But it's because people are so used to, let's call it a sense of stability in leadership, for them to believe in a party longer term. That doesn't mean that they don't believe in you. I'm not saying that at all, because clearly the votes say that for themselves, right? But then what happens with, you have an 11-person presidential task team, while you have a 10-person leadership team for the party? How do we ensure, and how do you ensure that that doesn't get conflated, where one assumes the other? And shouldn't the responsibilities of that part of those leaders as well, from the high command downwards to yourself, for example, isn't that supposed to also be part of the whole conversation, to say we are aiding the leader of the party in ensuring that the messaging, and anytime he cannot attend certain things, you're able to take part in this?
Yeah, you see, Arabile, you can't deal with unconventional situations such as Umkhonto weSizwe party because Umkhonto as a party in itself is an enigma. It's unheard of. It's never been seen. Anything of this kind of a nature in a project has never been seen before. So you can't use conventional ways of dealing with unconventional circumstances.
What do you mean it hasn't been seen before?
No, well, where have you seen a political party that in 6 months becomes official opposition and garners as much votes, even though it's off the back of a rigged election? We still stand by that. You know, that's a fact. So the unconventional circumstances that Umkhonto weSizwe finds itself as the fastest growing political party, there's nothing wrong with bringing about, you know, all hands on deck and bringing about programs and measures that will advance the party and strengthen the party. And such is the case also with this. As you would have heard, which was mentioned by the chairperson of the Presidential Task Team, is that, you know, there's going to be a Presidential Task Team charter, which in effect is being drafted. And of course, naturally, that charter will take into consideration, of course, the leadership, the structure, the constitution, which we're obviously undergoing also a constitutional review as an organization. And all these initiatives are aimed at strengthening the party.
Is that not putting the cart before the horse, though? Because should the charter have not come before the actual task team itself?
No, it's not putting the cart before the horse here. This charter exists.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a matter of how do you now integrate it into the broader perspective in light of their terms of reference. Remember, you have a framework already of the terms of reference, which are defined, and then that will then in effect lead into an effective charter that integrates everything else. And you can't, putting the cart before the horse would be concluding a charter without having engaged and done a proper assessment of the organization. Remember what we also have, which is also important. As Umkhonto weSizwe party, and a very noble comrade of ours, Madume Shoko, you know, wrote a very interesting piece. And he speaks about, you know, dynamics of a movement such as ourselves. And he points out that, you know, you're going to find those that are opportunists, which we have and we've seen in this organization, you know. And the problem with opportunists is that they come in because they realize that, you know, there seems to be instability or a lack of discipline, right? And the same with then what you then find those, he calls them lumpen proletariats, right? Who have been marginalized and effectively can easily be manipulated, right? As opposed to the, which have now defined the lumpen bourgeoisie. But then he also touches on the Trojan horses, which is also some of the biggest, one of the biggest challenges we've been having to face with all the time as an organization such as ourselves. And the Trojan horses are the ones that come in with an aim to divide and conquer and to take over the organization. So when you're an organization such as ourselves, and these are, you know, examples I'm giving you, they're not new to Umkhonto weSizwe party.
No, of course not.
But they're very prevalent.
Yeah.
And if it means that bringing structures such as this and strengthening the party, you know, means that we bring in advisory committees, we strengthen the integration thereof with the National High Command, the leadership, and the President's task team. So be it.
Yeah.
Because we need to ensure that we survive. We're the only left, by the way, and surviving. Unlike the former liberation movement.
Look, we're going to talk about it a little bit more. Look, I'm going to cut you, unfortunately, only because we, unfortunately, do have to pay the bills, just a little bit. But we're going to continue with the chat in just a moment. So we're going to take a short break. I'll be back with the spokesperson for the MK party in just a moment. Paul Ndlela joining us in studio. All right, we're still joined by the MK party spokesperson, Paul Ndlela, as we talk about the presidential task team that has now been put in place by President Jacob Zuma, the leader of the MK party. Paul, again, we were just talking about this beforehand, before we went to this break, and you were just talking about the key aspects in between your party that you've had to deal with as a young political party at this time as well. Do you think you've built capacity in different positions in order to grow yourselves as a party, as this young party, to strengthen these certain parts that you feel perhaps are missing? And is that the reason then for this presidential task team, to say the leadership of the party may come in future from these people that we identify?
I see what you're insinuating. But, you know, we need not read more than what I'm saying.
Are you sure?
about what's being done here. Strengthening the party is exactly that, strengthening the party.
Okay.
And we've always said that we'll deploy comrades where we believe they're best suited. And it's just said that, you know, in actual fact, it works to our advantage, the fact that we've got the flexibility to be able to deploy comrades as and when we need to. You see, part of the biggest problem with, for instance, the former liberation movement is that people are there and they become cozy and they're comfortable because they're appointed by branches. And they do so, you know, to the detriment of, you know, the ideology, their policies, and even the people that they're supposed to represent. Everyone refers to Umkhonto and says, well, we are unstable. This country is unstable. And who governs that? The GNU.
Yeah.
If you look at the GNU, what's happening right now, each of those parties that are represented in the GNU, there's instability. And these are people that are supposed to be leading us.
Sure.
And it's interesting that everyone wants to speak about Umkhonto and Sizwe being unstable. But the country is unstable itself. The country it's going down the doldrums, and it's a fact. And then you're finding, you know, political parties, you know, because of policy posture and a dichotomy, total opposite ends of policy posture, fighting as opposed to serving the people. But they want to come and tell Umkhonto and Sizwe and focus on Umkhonto and Sizwe. But clearly, I mean, maybe we shouldn't blame them. Umkhonto and Sizwe is the fastest growing political party, and of course it is the threat. It is the #1 enemy to the GNU. So strengthening, and again, here's the thing, let me ask the following. If you look at Umkhonto and Sizwe, just for instance in Parliament, and even in terms of the leadership, if you look at some of the leaders in Umkhonto and Sizwe, majority of them have been CEOs of state-owned entities, and during their tenure, those state-owned entities performed. The president himself, if you look at the stats in terms of his presidency compared to now, we did well as a country. We never had the loans. We never had austerity budgets. If you look at even in Parliament, some of the members that represent us there.
But there's another one.
Now, what I want to ask,
who's in court right now.
Which I'd want to ask you is the following: give me any other political party that can show you a leader or leadership that's as strong as ours, that has got a proven track record from president coming down. Give me one.
But aren't all of them from a former liberation movement themselves, as you made note of?
But I'm saying to you, if they are going to be talking about, for instance, that Umkhonto and Sizwe may not have capacity, we're unstable, no, there's no such thing. Okay. Our leadership is strong, and we're well poised, and in terms of our posture as well, to govern. I mean, if they were to say Umkhonto and Sizwe, we need to take over tomorrow, well, of course, we've got the capacity to do so. So it's more than anything else.
What portfolio are you taking? What portfolio are you taking?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm not taking any portfolio. As you'd have seen, you've known what my role has been, and I continue to play the role that I do.
Future leader of the party. Some would say Duduzane Zuma, now being put in this presidential task team, could possibly be the future leader of this party.
Is that what you are
No, I'm asking. I'm just asking. Could that be a possibility? Is that true? Is that a supposition somebody might be making up, etc., etc.? What are your thoughts?
Duduzane Zuma has been appointed to play a role in the political task team. As is the case with other people that have been appointed in that political task team, as is the case with other members that have been identified to play roles in the various other regions, leadership roles, including in Parliament. Remember, we're still all deployees. And I always say that we are all deployees. No one is permanent in Umkhonto and Sizwe. The only person that we could say is permanent is the president. No one is permanent.
Sure.
And that's important as well, because then South Africans can know that, you know, if we're not happy, we're not going to wait for 5 years. We're going to make a call now and put pressure and say, Umkhonto and Sizwe, you're not performing here. And we'll certainly adapt. Because remember, we're here because of the people. We're appointed by them. So let's not read too much into what you're saying. I mean, at one point, it was his sister that we were saying, is she going to... So was that the case? So I think it's important that, you know, people understand that this is a political party. It's a movement of the people. And it's the people that will make that determination in terms of how we move forward.
So this movement is ready for the local government elections then? Wherever they may be later this year?
The last time I checked, they were asking, is this movement even ready for even more than 5% leading up to national government elections?
Yeah.
And look what happened. So we are well positioned. If you look at the stats and how we've performed, remember every single percent that we got in the by-elections, that alone is a gain for us because we've never participated in by-elections, never participated in local government elections. So is Umkhonto and Sizwe well positioned? We're well positioned. Are we 100% ready? Not yet. Okay. We can't say we're 100% ready. There's still a lot of work that's going to be done, and parts of that, like I said, you've seen obviously with the announcement.
Sure.
And there's going to be further announcements. We are going to be bringing, like I said, unconventional solutions and approaches and programs that this country has never seen.
Unconventional is one word. There's so many other words.
Yeah.
I think so many other commentators have certainly put forward in the very same desk. Tlamulo, always good chatting to you. Thank you so much. You're always willing to actually, I suppose, share the dichotomy of the MK party and what that looks like. Tlamulo Ndlela is the spokesperson for the MK party. That brings things to an end then for the Politics Wrap. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll have more for you, of course, as the weeks and the months progress. A week is a very long time in politics.